The silence was the worst part. Not the screaming, not the accusations, but the heavy, suffocating silence that filled the house after she left. I stood in the doorway, clutching a worn teddy bear our daughter loved, watching her taxi disappear down the street, a cloud of dust the only evidence she'd ever been here at all. They thought they had broken me, leaving me with the shattered pieces of what was once a family. But in that moment, something else was born, a quiet, simmering resolve. If you've ever felt abandoned by the person you trusted most to care for your family, subscribe now. My name is Chloe, and before that taxi pulled away, I thought I had the perfect life. A loving wife, Sarah, a beautiful one-year-old daughter, Lily, and a comfortable home in the suburbs. We'd built everything together, brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice. Sarah had always been the adventurous one, the spark of spontaneity in our otherwise predictable routine. I loved that about her. Or at least, I thought I did. A few months before her impromptu trip, she started acting distant. Late nights at the office, hushed phone calls in the hallway, a general air of dissatisfaction that hung over her like a storm cloud. I tried talking to her, of course. Communication was the cornerstone of our relationship, or so I believed, but every attempt was met with vague answers and dismissals. Just stressed, Chloe, she'd say, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Need some me time. Then came the bombshell. A month-long trip to Europe with her girlfriends. No discussion, no compromise, just a statement. I need space, Chloe, I'm suffocating. And with that, she booked a flight and left, leaving me, Lily, and a mountain of bills in her wake. The first week was a blur of sleepless nights, endless diaper changes, and the constant, piercing cries of a baby who missed her mother. I stumbled through each day, fueled by lukewarm coffee and sheer willpower. Work suffered, the house became a disaster zone, and I felt myself spiraling into a dark abyss of exhaustion and despair. Sarah, meanwhile, was posting idyllic photos on social media, sipping wine in Paris, posing in front of the Colosseum, laughing with her friends against the backdrop of a Tuscan sunset. Not a single mention of Lily, not a single thought for the woman she'd left behind to pick up the pieces. My friends tried to be supportive, but their words felt hollow. She'll come to her senses, Chloe, they'd say. She loves you and Lily. But deep down, I knew something was terribly wrong. This wasn't just a case of needing a vacation. This was a deliberate act of abandonment, a calculated disregard for the vows we'd made and the family we'd created. The financial strain was immense. Sarah had always handled the finances, and I quickly realized she'd been hiding things. Credit card debt I knew nothing about, unpaid bills piling up, a secret bank account she'd been transferring money into for months. I felt like an absolute fool. Blinded by love, I'd ignored the warning signs, the subtle shifts in her behavior, the growing distance between us. I was so busy trying to be the perfect wife and mother that I hadn't noticed my entire world crumbling around me. Then, one night, as I was rocking Lily to sleep, I received a text message from an unknown number. It was a screenshot of an email Sarah had sent to one of her girlfriends, the one she was supposedly traveling with. The email contained detailed instructions on how to sell our house, liquidate our assets, and transfer the money to an offshore account. The subject line read, Operation Freedom. That's when the simmering resolve turned into a raging inferno. The person I trusted most was one of them. That email, those two words, Operation Freedom, burned into my mind, searing away any remaining doubt. It wasn't just a midlife crisis, it was a calculated act of betrayal. My hands trembled as I reread the message, each line a fresh wound. The woman I had pledged my life to, the mother of my child, was systematically dismantling our lives, piece by piece, with cold, ruthless efficiency. Sleep became a distant memory. I would lie awake for hours, Lily asleep in her crib beside me, replaying every moment of our relationship, searching for clues I had missed, red flags I had ignored. The silence of the house was deafening, amplifying the sound of my own ragged breathing, the frantic beating of my heart. Guilt gnawed at me. How could I have been so blind, so trusting? Had I been so consumed with playing the role of the perfect wife that I had failed to see the darkness growing within her? The days turned into an endless cycle of work, childcare, and frantic attempts to salvage what was left of our finances. I confronted Sarah via email, attaching the screenshot of her incriminating message. Her response was chillingly detached. "It's not what it looks like, Chloe," she wrote. "I can explain everything when I get back." But I knew that was a lie. There was no explanation that could justify her actions, no excuse for the pain she had inflicted. I contacted a lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Ms. Evans, who listened to my story with a grim expression. "She's planning to leave you with nothing, Chloe," she said bluntly. "We need to act fast." Ms. Evans filed a temporary restraining order, preventing Sarah from selling the house or accessing our joint accounts. It was a small victory, but it gave me a glimmer of hope. I started documenting everything, meticulously gathering evidence of Sarah's deception. Bank statements, emails, text messages, even her social media posts. Every detail was carefully cataloged and filed away. I knew that I was in for a long and bitter battle, but I was determined to protect Lily and salvage what I could of our future. The financial pressure mounted. With Sarah gone, I was solely responsible for all the household expenses, the mortgage payments, the childcare costs. I took on extra shifts at work, sacrificing my own sleep and sanity to make ends meet. I even considered selling some of our belongings, anything to keep us afloat. One evening, as I was sorting through a pile of old photographs, I stumbled upon a box of Sarah's belongings. Old journals, letters from friends, souvenirs from her travels. I hesitated for a moment, then opened the box. Inside, I found a photograph of Sarah with another woman, their arms wrapped around each other, their faces flushed with affection. On the back of the photo, Sarah had written, "My true love." My heart sank. This wasn't just about money or freedom, it was about someone else. Someone she had been hiding from me for years. The realization hit me like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me. I felt a surge of anger, betrayal, and a profound sense of grief. I had lost not only my wife but also the illusion of the perfect life I thought we had. As I sat there, clutching the photograph, Lily started to cry. I wiped away my tears and went to her, scooping her up in my arms. "It's okay, baby," I whispered, holding her close. "Mommy's here, I'll always be here for you." In that moment I made a vow to myself, I would not let Sarah destroy us. I would fight for Lily, for our future, and for the justice we deserved. Sarah returned from Europe a few weeks later, acting as if nothing had happened. She walked through the door with a breezy smile, as if she had just been on a pleasant vacation. "Chloe, darling, I'm home," she exclaimed, dropping her bags in the hallway. I stood there, arms crossed, watching her with a cold, detached gaze. "Don't darling me, Sarah," I said, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. "We need to talk." "Talk?" Sarah echoed, feigning innocence. "Of course, darling, what's on your mind?" She sauntered into the living room, her eyes scanning the space, carefully avoiding my gaze. Lily, sensing the tension, started to fuss in her playpen. I picked her up, holding her close, her small body a warm anchor in the storm raging inside me. "Don't play coy, Sarah," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I know everything. The email, the offshore account, the woman in the photograph." The color drained from her face. The mask of nonchalance slipped, revealing the cold, calculating woman beneath. "Chloe, I can explain," she began, but I cut her off. "There's nothing to explain," I said, my voice rising. "You betrayed me, you betrayed our daughter, you tried to steal everything we've worked for. How could you do this to us?" Her eyes narrowed. "Don't act so innocent, Chloe," she spat. "You were suffocating me. I needed to escape. You wouldn't understand." "Understand?" I repeated, incredulous. "Understand that you were planning to abandon your family and run off with another woman." "No, Sarah, I don't understand. I thought we loved each other." A cruel laugh escaped her lips. "Love, that's a fairy tale, Chloe, grow up. I was never really in love with you. It was convenient, you were safe." Her words were like knives, twisting in my heart. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to shatter every object in the room. But I held myself back, focusing on Lily's innocent face, her wide, trusting eyes. I wouldn't let Sarah see me break. Not yet. "Get out," I said, my voice cold and hard. "Get out of my house, you're not welcome here anymore." "This is my house too, Chloe," she retorted, her voice rising. "I have as much right to be here as you do." "Not anymore," I said, reaching for my phone. "I've already filed for divorce. The restraining order is in place. If you don't leave, I'll call the police." She glared at me, her eyes filled with hatred. For a moment I thought she might strike me, but then she seemed to deflate, her shoulders slumping in defeat. "Fine," she said, her voice dripping with venom. "You win for now." She grabbed her bags and stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind her. The silence that followed was even more deafening than before. I sank to the floor, Lily still in my arms, and wept. I wept for the loss of my marriage, for the betrayal of my trust, for the shattered dreams of the future. I felt utterly broken, defeated, and alone. The next few weeks were a living nightmare. The divorce proceedings were messy and acrimonious. Sarah fought me every step of the way, disputing the restraining order, demanding a larger share of the assets, even trying to take custody of Lily. I felt like I was drowning in legal fees and paperwork. Sleep was a luxury I could no longer afford. I was constantly exhausted, stressed, and on edge. My friends tried to be supportive, but I felt like I was burdening them with my problems. I isolated myself, shutting out the world, retreating into a cocoon of despair. One evening, after a particularly grueling day in court, I came home to find an eviction notice taped to my door. Sarah had stopped paying the mortgage, and the bank was foreclosing on the house. I sank to my knees, the notice clutched in my hand, and sobbed. I had lost everything. My wife, my home, my financial security, my sense of self. I felt like I had hit rock bottom. As I sat there, wallowing in self-pity, Lily crawled over to me, her little hands reaching for my face. She looked at me with her innocent eyes, her face creased with concern. In that moment, something shifted inside me. I realized that I couldn't give up. I couldn't let Sarah destroy us. I had to fight back, not for myself, but for Lily. I wiped away my tears and picked her up, holding her close. "It's okay, baby," I whispered. "Mommy's going to fix this, I promise." A spark of resolve flickered within me, a tiny ember of hope in the darkness. I would not be a victim. I would be a warrior. I would learn her secrets. I would discover her weaknesses. And I would use them against her. The time for tears was over. The time for revenge had begun. I smiled, I played their game, but I was recording everything. The eviction notice became the catalyst. Not for despair, but for action. I knew I couldn't fight Sarah head-on in court. She had the money, the resources, and the ruthlessness to drag the proceedings out for years, bankrupting me in the process. I needed a different strategy. I needed leverage. I needed something she couldn't buy her way out of. My first step was to secure a safe place for Lily and me. My best friend Emily offered us her spare room without hesitation. "You don't even have to ask, Chloe," she said, her voice filled with concern. "We're here for you always." Moving in with Emily was a temporary solution, but it gave me the stability I needed to focus on my plan. I spent hours researching forensic accounting, corporate law, and online privacy. I devoured books, articles, and online tutorials, immersing myself in the world of deception and manipulation. The more I learned, the more I realized how carefully Sarah had planned her betrayal. She had covered her tracks meticulously, using shell corporations, offshore accounts, and encrypted communications to conceal her activities. But she had made one crucial mistake. She underestimated me. I started by tracing the money. I obtained copies of our bank statements, credit card bills, and investment records, meticulously analyzing every transaction, every transfer, every suspicious activity. It was like piecing together a complex jigsaw puzzle, each piece revealing a small part of Sarah's elaborate scheme. I discovered a series of transfers to a company registered in the Cayman Islands, a known tax haven. The company's name was Ocean Breeze Investments, a thinly veiled reference to Sarah's new lover, whose name was Marina. I dug deeper, using online databases and corporate records to uncover the company's true ownership. It was controlled by a trust fund established by Marina's wealthy family. The pieces were starting to fall into place. Sarah wasn't just having an affair, she was planning to run away with Marina and live off her family's fortune. But I needed more evidence. I needed proof that Sarah had intentionally defrauded me and diverted marital assets for her own personal gain. That's when I decided to take a risk. I installed hidden cameras in our house, disguised as smoke detectors and power outlets. I knew it was a violation of her privacy, but I felt I had no choice. I needed to catch her in the act to document her lies and deceit. The cameras recorded everything: Sarah's phone calls, her conversations with Marina, her attempts to sell off our belongings and transfer the money to her offshore account. It was like watching a movie unfold, a slow-motion train wreck of betrayal and deceit. One evening, I captured a particularly damning conversation. Sarah was on the phone with Marina, discussing their plans to disappear together. "Once I get the money out of the house, we can leave," Sarah said, her voice filled with excitement. We'll start a new life, just the two of us. No more Chloe, no more Lily. My blood ran cold. She was willing to abandon her own daughter for this woman. That's when I knew I had to act fast. I contacted Ms. Evans, my lawyer, and presented her with the evidence I had gathered. She was impressed. "This is gold, Chloe," she said, her eyes gleaming. "This will destroy her case." Ms. Evans filed a motion to freeze Sarah's assets and obtain a court order for her arrest. The judge granted the motion, citing the overwhelming evidence of fraud and conspiracy. The police arrived at our house the next morning to arrest Sarah. She was caught completely off guard, her face a mask of shock and disbelief. "You can't do this," she screamed as the officers led her away in handcuffs. "I have rights." "So does your daughter," I replied, my voice cold and hard. "You should have thought about that before you betrayed us." As Sarah was being taken away, she turned to me, her eyes filled with hatred. "This isn't over, Chloe," she spat. "I'll get you for this. You'll regret the day you crossed me." I just smiled. "Bring it on, Sarah," I said. "I'm ready for you." The arrest of Sarah was a major victory, but it was only the beginning of the end. I still had to prove her guilt in court and recover the money she had stolen. The legal battle was long and arduous, but I was determined to see it through. I worked tirelessly with Ms. Evans, preparing our case, gathering more evidence, and building a solid defense against Sarah's inevitable counterattacks. I knew that Sarah would stop at nothing to protect herself, but I was confident that the truth would prevail. I focused on Lily, making sure she felt loved and secure despite the turmoil in our lives. I spent hours playing with her, reading her stories, and showering her with affection. She was my rock, my inspiration, my reason for fighting. One day, as I was tucking Lily into bed, she looked at me with her innocent eyes and said, "Mommy, will Daddy ever come back?" My heart broke. I didn't know what to tell her. I didn't want to lie to her, but I also didn't want to burden her with the truth. "Maybe someday, baby," I said, kissing her forehead. "But for now, it's just you and me, and we're going to be okay." I refused to let Lily grow up thinking her mother was a phantom, a ghost. I needed answers, not just for the court but for her. Sarah thought she was so clever, hiding behind her lawyers and her icy silence. But everyone has a weakness. And Sarah's, it was her ego. She believed she was smarter than everyone else, that she could outwit anyone. That arrogance was a crack in her armor, a vulnerability I could exploit. I focused on Marina. Sarah's weakness was not the money, it was her asterisk. I needed to know everything about this woman who had stolen my wife and nearly destroyed my family. I hired a private investigator, a gruff, no-nonsense woman named Brenda, who specialized in uncovering hidden truths. Brenda was expensive, but she was worth every penny. Within days, she had compiled a dossier on Marina that was thicker than a phone book. Marina came from old money, a privileged background of boarding schools, European vacations, and debutante balls. She was an artist, or at least she called herself one, dabbling in various mediums but never achieving any real success. She was also a notorious socialite, known for her extravagant parties and her string of broken hearts. But the most interesting thing Brenda uncovered was Marina's financial situation. Despite her family's wealth, Marina was deeply in debt. She had a gambling problem, a penchant for expensive habits, and a trail of unpaid bills stretching back years. Sarah, blinded by infatuation, had walked right into a trap. She saw Marina as her ticket to freedom, her escape from a boring marriage. But in reality, she was just a pawn in Marina's game. Marina needed Sarah's money to pay off her debts and maintain her lavish lifestyle. It was a perfect setup. Sarah would provide the funds, and Marina would provide the affection. And I was going to use it to tear them both down. The plan started to form. I would lure Sarah into a false sense of security, make her believe that she was winning, that she could still salvage something from the wreckage. And then, at the last possible moment, I would spring my trap, exposing her lies and her deceit for the world to see. I started by dropping the restraining order. Ms. Evans was furious. "Are you crazy, Chloe?" she exclaimed. "She'll run, she'll disappear with the money." "Trust me," I said. "I know what I'm doing." I knew Sarah would see it as a sign of weakness, a chance to regain control. I also agreed to mediation, a process where a neutral third party would attempt to facilitate a settlement. Sarah's lawyer jumped at the opportunity. They believed they could bully me into accepting a smaller share of the assets. They were wrong. I arrived at the mediation session with a smile on my face, acting nervous and unsure. I let Sarah's lawyer do most of the talking, nodding meekly and occasionally interjecting with a hesitant question. I even agreed to some of their demands, offering concessions on certain assets. Sarah watched me with a smug expression, her eyes gleaming with triumph. She thought she had me right where she wanted me, but I was playing a different game. During a break in the mediation, I casually mentioned that I had discovered some irregularities in our financial records. Oh, nothing major, I said with a shrug. Just a few discrepancies that I'm sure can be easily explained. Sarah's face paled. I knew I had struck a nerve. Later that day, Sarah called me. Her voice was strained, her usual confidence replaced with a hint of desperation. "Chloe, can we meet?" she asked. "I think we need to talk." "Of course, darling," I said, my voice dripping with false sweetness. "Anything for you." We agreed to meet at a quiet cafe near our old house. I arrived early, securing a table in the back corner where I could observe Sarah without being seen. She arrived a few minutes later, her face pale and drawn. She looked like a cornered animal, her eyes darting nervously around the room. "What do you want, Chloe?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Just to talk," I said with a smile. "Catch up, see how you're doing." She glared at me, her eyes filled with suspicion. "Don't play games with me, Chloe," she said. "I know you're up to something." "Me," I said, feigning innocence. "Whatever do you mean?" I took a sip of my coffee, savoring the moment. I knew I had her exactly where I wanted her. "I know about Marina," I said, my voice cold and hard. "I know about the affair, the offshore account, the whole damn thing." Her face crumpled. The mask of composure finally shattered, revealing the fear and desperation beneath. "How? How did you find out?" she stammered. "It doesn't matter," I said. "What matters is that I know." "Not going to let you get away with it." I leaned forward, my eyes locking onto hers. "I'm going to expose you, Sarah," I said. "I'm going to show the world what you really are. A liar, a cheat, and a heartless female dog." Her eyes widened in terror. She knew I wasn't bluffing. She knew I had the power to destroy her. "Please, Chloe," she begged, her voice trembling. "Don't do this. I'll do anything. Just name your price." "It's too late for that, Sarah," I said, standing up. "The game is over." I turned to leave, but then I paused, a wicked smile spreading across my face. "Oh, and one more thing," I said. "Marina knows everything too." I watched as her world imploded. The cafe blurred around her, and the sound of shattering glass seemed to echo in my ears. The trap was set. Now all that was left was to watch it spring. The call from Marina came that night, a frantic, tear-choked mess that was almost unintelligible. I pieced together that Sarah had confronted her, spewing accusations and demanding answers about the offshore account. Marina, desperate to save her own skin, had turned on Sarah, revealing everything she knew about Sarah's plan to defraud me, the hidden assets, the lies she had spun to everyone. The fallout was immediate and brutal. I let Ms. Evans unleash the full force of the evidence I had gathered. The judge, already predisposed against Sarah after the initial arrest, was visibly disgusted. The details of the affair, the offshore accounts, the hidden cameras, and the recordings were laid bare for everyone in the courtroom to see and hear. Sarah's lawyer, realizing the hopelessness of the situation, practically resigned on the spot. Sarah's face was a mask of fury and humiliation. The crimson drained from her face, leaving her pale and gaunt. She tried to interrupt, to deny the evidence, but her voice was drowned out by the weight of the truth. The judge revoked her bail and ordered her to be held in custody until sentencing. The news spread like wildfire. The local news picked up the story, painting Sarah as a greedy adulteress who had tried to ruin her wife and abandon her child. Her reputation, once pristine, was now irreparably tarnished. Her friends and colleagues turned their backs on her. Her family disowned her. She lost everything. The divorce was swift and merciless. I was awarded full custody of Lily and granted a substantial portion of the marital assets, including the house. Sarah was left with nothing but her clothes and the crushing weight of her own bad decisions. I watched her being led away from the courthouse, her head bowed in shame. There was no triumph in my heart, no sense of satisfaction, just a hollow ache. I had won, but at what cost? My family had been torn apart, my life irrevocably changed. Lily was still traumatized by the experience, constantly asking about her other parent, and struggling to understand why they weren't together. I knew that the scars of this betrayal would run deep, affecting both of us for years to come. I focused on rebuilding our lives, creating a safe and loving environment for Lily. I enrolled her in therapy to help her process her emotions and cope with the trauma. I spent hours playing with her, reading her stories, and showering her with affection. I wanted to show her that she was loved, that she was safe, and that we would get through this together. One evening, as I was tucking Lily into bed, she looked at me with her innocent eyes and said, "Mommy, are you happy now?" I smiled and kissed her forehead. "I'm happy because I have you, baby," I said. "And that's all that matters." The legal proceedings concluded with Sarah being found guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced her to the maximum prison term allowed under the law. As she was being led away, she turned to me one last time, her eyes filled with a mixture of hatred and regret. "You ruined my life, Chloe," she said, her voice trembling with rage. I looked at her, my face devoid of emotion. "You ruined your own life, Sarah," I said. "I just made sure you faced the consequences." I walked away, leaving her to her fate. I returned to our house, the house that was now truly ours. I walked through the rooms, each one filled with memories, both good and bad. I paused in the living room, where I had first discovered Sarah's betrayal. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, releasing the anger and resentment that had consumed me for so long. It was over, I was free. I looked out the window at the setting sun, casting a golden glow over the yard. Lily was playing on the swings, her laughter echoing through the air. I smiled. Despite everything, we had survived. We had emerged from the darkness stronger and more resilient than ever before. They lost everything. I just smiled. Revenge isn't sweet, it's necessary. Would you have done the same? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for more justice.